Good morning and Happy New Year. Welcome to worship with the community of the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. I'm the Reverend Sherry Woodbury, the church's minister, and I'm delighted that each of you has chosen to join us for this service, whether you're here in the sanctuary or online. A special welcome to visitors. This is a bit of an unusual Sunday, as today we share a mini worship service, and then we will roll right into our mid-year congregational meeting. Visitors may not want to stay for that business meeting, so you're welcome to exit then if you like, but it's also fine to stay and listen if you choose. There will be no story for all ages in our shortened service today, so kids can go straight to their RE classrooms. If you're joining us online, I encourage you to create a YouTube account and sign into it so you can participate in joys and concerns and say hi to other folks online. You'll also find an order of service uploaded to the church website where you can download it. Immediately after the worship service, those online who want to continue with the mid-year congregational meeting can switch to Zoom with the provided link for that business meeting. We'll be using the breakout room feature later. I'm going to ask those in the sanctuary to put your phone on airplane mode right now if you might be on church Wi-Fi. We had some new cabling done for our internet this past week and are going to finish that up next week, so I'm hoping this is the last time I'll ask you this, but let's do airplane mode one more time today to make sure our stream signal is strong. Lastly, it's appropriate to acknowledge that the First Unitarian Church of Omaha occupies the traditional treaty lands of the Omaha and Otoe-Missouri tribal nations, whose sovereignty existed long before the state of Nebraska. We would also like to express our respect to the Ponca tribe of Nebraska, the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska, the Santee Sioux tribe of Nebraska, and over 170 other tribes represented within the Omaha area. I invite Ian Shanklin forward now to light our flaming chalice, and as he does so, you can join in the chalice sliding words. Spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love, alive in all creation. As we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. I invite you to rise if you're comfortable doing so, and join in our opening hymn, number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. We'll sing it twice. Each week, we practice the spiritual virtue of generosity by taking up a community offering. Half of the loose currency in the offering plate goes to a local cause which resonates with you values. If you're online or prefer to give via your smartphone, you can use the QR code or link provided. Our Share the Plate recipient for January is Restoring Dignity, which serves refugee families in the Omaha area. They help with housing advocacy, various household donations, information in multiple languages, education, and referral to other agencies. During the offertory music, you can also put any joys and concerns you want to have shared in the basket with one of those yellow cards. And if you're online, you can go ahead and put any joy or concern in the live chat now. The offering is gratefully received as we hear a gift of music from longtime friend of this church, Stan Harper. Thank you, Stan and Judy, and welcome back. When we share our joys are multiplied. And when we share our concerns, our community can offer its care. I've got a couple of items that were sent in beforehand, and then we'll see from Colin if there are any online. Taylor and Jessica Eamon share that Taylor will be having open heart surgery this Wednesday to replace his aortic heart valve. They say we're anticipating a 7 to 10 day hospital stay, followed by a 12-week recovery at home. Well wishes are much appreciated. And Sandy and Bill Bruns ask us to please lift up our hearts for their dear friend Chaz Weatherby and his wonderful family and his Carpe Diem string quartet. Sandy says this amazing musician just went into hospice and will probably not live much more than a week. The void that he has left in our Summit County community and world is vast. We need to send lots of love to him and his family. So sending some love out to their friends in Colorado. Any items online?
Okay, I'll just say it to you. The Lovely Women's Alliance pop-up yesterday, just that was what you said.
Beth Conover is lifting up the Lovely Women's Alliance pop-up event that happened here at the church yesterday.
That appears to be it.
Okay. And you can always send those in advance on our church website, as well as sharing them on Sunday morning. On the journey, that's our topic today. By living into all 7 of our Unitarian Universalist principles, we answer the call of love. This church is considering making an additional commitment to an 8th principle that would help us more deeply and fully answer that call. Here's the language of the 8th principle that members will be voting on at our annual meeting in May. First Unitarian Church of Omaha covenants to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. In early December, I preached on the 8th principle, sharing what I see as the promise and the perils with anecdotes. If you missed this service, it's online, and several special e-blasts with resources on this topic, including a frequently asked questions list, were sent out from the church over the past couple of weeks. That material answers a lot of questions and is well worth exploring. I promised that this Sunday I would follow up by sharing some concrete examples of how UU congregations put their commitment into action after adopting the 8th principle. At the end of today's business meeting, folks will have the chance to discuss some of these ideas in breakout groups, both here in the sanctuary and online. And church leadership will also be gathering some feedback from you. I've got 3 kinds of examples to share with you. The first are some things that this church has actually already been doing that are consistent with the 8th principle. Many churches who have already adopted the 8th principle are undertaking similar actions. So here are 5 things that our congregation can continue to build on. First, we have intentionally brought a diversity of voices, cultures, and life experiences into our shared worship life over the past several years through diverse guest speakers, readings, musical styles, and guest musicians. I hope you have found this variety enriching and inspiring. Our worship team, I, and our music leaders will carry on with that effort. Second, the church has offered educational opportunities that help participants to learn about the life experiences of diverse people whose experiences might be different than their own, and to develop real-world skills. There was last year's book discussion on widening the circle of concern, a resource that our board and staff have also explored. You may remember a White Allies anti-racism dialogue class that was offered, and several gatherings with Chaplain Crystal Williams, who shared from her experience as a Black woman in an interactive presentation. We can continue to offer opportunities like this, and I hope more people will participate. A third way our church is already answering the call of love is through relationships with communities of color beyond our church walls, listening to their insights and leadership. First Unitarian has had a sister church relationship for quite a few years now with Clare Memorial, a predominantly Black church in North Omaha. Our members respond with food pantry donations, volunteer time, financial support for special projects, and even local advocacy, addressing needs that Clare and its pastor, Portia Cavett, identify for the uplift of that community. And more of our members have been building relationships with diverse members of the wider community through another avenue, the Alternatives to Violence Project that works with prisoners and its educational offerings, some of them held right here. AVP is a community program that builds concrete skills while it builds beloved community. Last example I'll give of relationship building efforts in our church is with local Indigenous people. We've heard from several Native speakers, and you've probably noticed that each week we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples on whose land we worship. Several times this winter and spring, we will be directing our Share the Plate collections to local Indigenous-led organizations furthering their work for their communities. Relationships are key to building a beloved community, both inside our church and beyond. A fourth way this church is taking some baby steps, this is a real baby step, toward living the eighth principle, is in the stories that we tell about ourselves through what people encounter here in our building and online. For example, as part of the improved signage that our membership coordinator put in place in the building last summer, we've shared a bit about one of our historic members, Whitney Young, a Black member of our church at one time who was also a leader for civil rights in the community. One of our classrooms is named for Whitney Young, so the name may ring a bell. Sharing his story can communicate to anyone who comes here that people of color have long belonged in this church, and they can too. A fifth and final fledgling movement toward the eighth principle I'll mention this morning is a new team that is still in the process of forming to help guide and engage our church in this work. So far, the eighth principle team is made up of Ed Kelly, Linda Parker, Della Bynum, Nancy Scott, Kim Donovan, and Suzanne King. The group hasn't met yet and still welcomes additional participants. I'm happy to share that we've also had consistent commitment from the elected leadership of the church as well as its staff. So leadership and structure to support our work, we're getting going on those. Bottom line is, after our vote next May, this church will not be starting from scratch in living into the eighth principle. What about other churches? Education is a widespread and ongoing activity, and congregations committed to this journey. UUs in Honolulu participated in a Jubilee 3 anti-racism training. And one Colorado church that adopted the eighth principle last May, each committee or team has been invited to work with the eighth principle in their area. The finance committee chose a book to read together that leads them into concrete action steps. Isn't that interesting? Every team and committee can have a connection to the work. Many congregations are finding that caucus groups or identity-based groups create smaller communities where people can get the support they need and do the work they need based on their own identities. UUs in Mount Diablo, California, have caucus groups for people of color and for white people, respectively. Columbus, Ohio UUs have a white caucus group too, which alternates its focus between addressing institutional racism and personal work. I was really fascinated to also find several examples of UU groups exploring how their governance systems and practices might help them live into beloved community, the way they govern themselves. A few years ago, at a conference of the UU Music Ministries group, I was able to witness that group's board move away from a heavy-handed dependence on Robert's Rules of Order, which can undercut inclusion efforts. In Boise, Idaho, board members at the UU Church have been exploring governance, bylaws, and end statements through the lens of equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. Leadership teams sometimes work with a coach who specializes in supporting congregations in their work for anti-oppression and beloved community. And in San Jose, California, the board is using the process observer role in their meetings with a particular eye toward anti-racism, anti-oppression, multiculturalism, and accountability to marginalized groups. Is that a familiar phrase, process observer? We've been using it on the board here for a while, I think. What catches my eye about First Unitarian in San Jose is that their board has a list of 4 questions that they distribute in print to all board members at each meeting. Our process feels a little vague to me. I think our folks are never quite sure what the process observer is supposed to observe, but they have this list of 4 things. And at the end of each meeting, the process observer shares what they've noticed, offering affirmations and specific examples, as well as suggestions about how the group can improve, specifically in relation to these carefully articulated aspirations for inclusion and accountability. I turn last to the UUs of Worcester, Massachusetts, who offer multiple examples of living into the 8th principle, including conscious consideration of accessibility, inclusion, and diversity in their remodeling and redecorating. This one caught my eye because of a striking anecdote that one of our members recently shared with me. This was in the context of our multimedia upgrade, which you're going to hear a little bit more about in the meeting, and the different values that shape our choices as a church about our building. The story went something like, some years ago, First Unitarian was part of a tour of historically and architecturally significant buildings in the area. One of the tour participants asked one of our members who received the tour group whether this church was still in use. Evidently, it looked to them like this church was frozen in a previous era, not like a living building that people still use today. So I wonder if we were to prioritize accessibility to diverse people and inclusion of all generations in remodeling and redecorating and upgrading our facility, how might that shape our decisions? How might this be not only a beautiful place with a rich history, but also a living building for today and tomorrow? The Worcester UUs also changed their policies for their Split the Plate program, kind of like our Share the Plate, to allow non-501c3 organizations, groups that aren't registered as nonprofits with the IRS, to receive funds. And that's because they recognize that grassroots organizations that work closely with marginalized communities don't always have that paperwork and haven't always jumped through all those hoops. And they reviewed personnel policies for diversity in recruitment and hiring, and equity in employment practices. So those are all the kinds of things we could be doing too. Let me close by sharing some of the aspirations that churches on the journey of the 8th principle name for their future work. These are aspirations of what they want that they haven't gotten to quite yet. In their own words, they want a review of the impact of our current practices and structures to help us identify and prioritize which ones are most in need of change. Very sensible setting priorities. Our 8th principle team could potentially coordinate such an effort here after our vote. Training for leaders, members, and staff was another one to help further understand how to create a more equitable and inclusive organization through structures, policies, behaviors, and so forth. One group aspired for discussion of racism and equity to become normal in all of our teams, groups, and activities, not seen as a distraction from the real work, but part of the real work. Another aspiration was for our greeters and members to participate in training that equips us to converse effectively with newcomers and avoid inadvertently making people feel like they don't belong. Another one, our board, committees, and staff begin using a lens of equity when making decisions to ensure policies, programs, and practices are culturally sensitive and inclusive. And here's the last aspiration I picked up on. One group said to work with other local congregations, they have a regional collaboration, and with our accountability partners in the community to consider how our UU churches together might use our financial and facility resources and member time and talents to repair the harm of systemic racism in our area. So thinking about how their congregation could be part of repair in the wider community. I mentioned previously that one of the perils of this journey can be feeling like you don't know what to do. That's something I feel myself sometimes. But as you can see, there's no shortage of examples and ideas and steps we can take. Training resources and coaches abound. Truly, if we want to go on this journey of building beloved community, we can just keep putting one foot in front of another. Step by step, we will be well on our way. I, for one, am energized by the many possibilities. The eighth principle beckons us on toward enriched community and becoming more whole people. May our journey be fascinating and fruitful as we answer the call of love. Amen. I invite you to rise if you like and join in our closing hymn, number 1014, in the Teal hymnal, Answering the Call of Love. Conversation on answering the call of love will continue as we move into the mid-year congregational meeting. We'll have some transition music from Stan as board leaders get set up for the meeting. If you are participating online, now is the time to switch to Zoom. The link is on our homepage and the order of service and other places. Small group facilitators who are here in the building, please go back to the foyer now and meet with Mark to get organized. Everyone else, enjoy the music.